Now, I will give you a demo of how to use VeloDB Cloud. First, log into VeloDB Cloud via our web URL and come to the Management Console. Of course, if you are a new user, please first register one trial account. When you successfully log into VeloDB Cloud console, our first step is to create a warehouse. VeloDB Cloud has two deployment options, SaaS and BIOC. For SaaS deployment, it provides fully managed service out of the box, which eliminates the need of maintaining underlying infrastructure and avoids excessive investment in tasks like resource management, security control, daily operation, etc. It is more suitable for customers who want to focus on developing data applications rather than operating and maintaining a data warehouse by themselves. For BIOC deployment, it allows you to directly deploy warehouses in your own VPC, while data is also stored in your own cloud storage like S3. This option is more suitable for customers with strict data security compliance. In the center of the screen, you can see two buttons for you to try these two options. 14 days free trial for SaaS mode and a 90 days free service fee for BIOC mode. Below these two buttons, the New Warehouse button is for directly create a paid warehouse. Now let's click New Warehouse to enter the warehouse creation page. Enter warehouse name. Here we use demo. Select deployment mode. Here we choose SaaS. Select the cloud platform, region, and availability zone where the warehouse is going to be deployed. Here we select the AWS US West region and availability zone AZ1. Keep the core version as default. You can also choose other release version from the list according to your requirement. For patch version, or in other words, minor version, we recommend to choose auto upgrade to keep the system up to date. Table names are case sensitive by default. You can also change it by choosing case insensitive. Finally, click Create and wait for the warehouse to be created. Usually it takes about 1 minute. After the warehouse is created, we continue to create the cluster. Enter the cluster name. Here we input cluster 1. Select how many vCPUs will be added in this cluster. Here we select 8 vCPUs for demo purpose. Set the cache size. Here we just keep it as default, 200 gigabytes. Click Create and wait for the cluster to be created. This will take about 3 minutes. Okay, the cluster is successfully created. Before we can connect to the warehouse using Web UI, we still have 2 settings to be done. First, click Connection on the left sidebar and go to Public Link tab. Click IP Whitelist Management button and add your IP into the whitelist here. Then go to Settings on the left sidebar. Change your warehouse initial password. Now we can connect to the warehouse via built-in Web UI. Click Web UI on the left sidebar. Input your username and password to log in. Password is the one we just changed. In VeloDB Cloud Web UI, it provides various functions like SQL Editor, session management, query audit, and so on. In Data tab, you can view your databases and table definitions. In Privileges tab, you can manage users, roles, and their authorizations. Finally, you can manage your data integration in Integration tab. In VeloDB Cloud, we provide some sample data for your test purpose. Here you can select sample data like TPC-H. Enter the integration name. Select the cluster and select the sample data size. Click Create and Load, and wait for the data to be imported. After sample data is imported into your warehouse, you can run SQL queries on these sample data. Also, you can refer to our documentation to import your own data. Now let's see how to run a SQL query. Click SQL Editor under Query on the left sidebar. Select the database and the cluster which will be executing the query. Enter your SQL statement and click Run to get the result. In addition to Web UI, you can also use MySQL Client or JDBC to connect to the data warehouse. For detailed connection information, please go to Connection, Public Link. You can see they are all listed there. If you need a more secure connection, please refer to the document in Private Link tab. So this is a simple demo of how to use VeloDB Cloud. As you can see, it's super easy. Next, I will introduce some extraordinary features of VeloDB Cloud based on its storage and computing separation architecture. The first and most important feature is elastic scaling. VeloDB Cloud provides two ways to scale in or to scale out a cluster. One is manual scaling. The cluster computing resource and cache space can be manually adjusted to a specified size at any time. For example, here I want to scale out my cluster from 8 vCPUs to 32 vCPUs. Now you can see it's in scaling process. Okay, it's done. The other is rule-based auto-scaling. Currently, it can be based on time. At least two rules with different vCPU settings are required to achieve time-based elastic scaling. For example, you can add two rules: scale out to 32 vCPU at 8 a.m. every day, and scale in to 16 vCPU at 8 p.m. every day. By enabling this rule, you can get an auto-scaling cluster to achieve more cost efficiency. The second fantastic feature of VeloDB Cloud is workload isolation through multiple clusters. For example, now we have cluster A. We can also create another cluster B. Now we have cluster B created, and it can be used in following scenarios. The first scenario is workload isolation between different business departments. For example, cluster A is used for sales, like sales analysis. Cluster B is used for human resource, like employee statistics analysis. So physical resource isolation can be achieved between multiple business departments without interfering with each other. The second scenario is read-write separation. You can create a dedicated cluster for read workload and write workloads separately. Cluster A specializes in processing data ingestion, like insert and update, while Cluster B specializes in processing query requests to ensure a stable query latency for users. The third scenario is real-time and offline workload isolation. For example, for large-scale batch processing tasks, they can be assigned to Cluster A, while Cluster B is for real-time online analytics. Under these different scenarios, you can set different size for each cluster according to your requirements, and also start or stop them independently. Also, you can specify which cluster to be used in MySQL client, JDBC, and data import method streamload. Here is the example of how to specify a cluster in MySQL client. This is the example in JDBC. And this is the example when you use streamload as the data import method. For more details, please refer to our product documentation. The third highlight feature of VeloDB Cloud is disaster recovery deployment across different availability zones. We have launched this feature in regions such as AWS Singapore, US East, and Hong Kong under SaaS mode. This feature supports deploying the core components, including warehouse, metadata, and object storage, across multiple availability zones. So even we encounter a cloud service failure at the availability zone level, our data warehouse service will still be online as normal. Here we take AWS US East region as an example. When creating a warehouse, we can select all three availability zones to deploy our warehouse simultaneously. So the warehouse, metadata, and object storage will be deployed into these multiple availability zones. After the warehouse is created, let's continue to create a cluster. When created a cluster, you can specify different availability zones where this cluster will be deployed. For example, here we deploy cluster A into AZ, US East 1A. Deploy cluster B into AZ US East 1B. After these two clusters are successfully created, for example, we can take cluster A as the main cluster, while take cluster B as the failover cluster. So when cluster A fails, We can rename cluster A to cluster X and rename cluster B to cluster A to ensure a smooth failover process. For more details about failover deployment, please refer to our documentation. At last, let me show you some other popular features of VeloDB Cloud. For example, system metrics. You can check key metrics of a warehouse or a cluster, such as CPU usage, memory usage, network throughput, as well as QPS, 99 percentile query latency, cache hit rate, etc. Furthermore, you can set alertings based on these metrics in Alerts tab to proactively monitor your cluster and keep it in a good state. Another popular feature is the billing center on the bottom left. There, you can check your monthly bills, as well as drill down to hourly details. VeloDB Cloud supports both cash deposit and attaching to your AWS or GCP Cloud Market deduction channels. Okay, that's all I want to share with you today. Hope you enjoy it, and you are very welcome to register VeloDB Cloud and give it a try. See you there. Thank you.